Welcome to Queen's Park Report. I'm Mark Rockburn. Joining me as always is Northumberland-Peterborough South MPP, David Piccini. And David, it's been a busy week as always for yourself in the province of Ontario. And I first thought we would start off with talking about the report that came out on long-term care homes. It was released by the Army or the military to the Premier. Premier released it to the residents of Ontario. Let's get your first response to it.
Yeah, Mark, it's horrific. It's shedding light on a problem that I think has existed for decades, for years, and something that I know many have been sounding the alarm bell on. It's something that is heartbreaking for myself, for and I think anyone who reads that report. But it's something that it behooves us as government representatives to address this now, and we must address this as a government. So this isn't going to happen overnight, Rob, but it is. I mean, there are immediate actions that need to take place, and of course, the Premier taking immediate control of the five long-term care facilities in question, and obviously not ruling out criminal charges for the negligence. I mean, there are practices, there are broader staffing challenges that are systemic, but some of those actions, to be frank, I don't care what line of work you're in, that's never okay.
So where do we go from here, David, with this?
Well, I think there's a number of things we have to do. I mean, we have to look at the staffing model. We have to look at the provision of care. We have to look at what levels of staffing for what. I mean, there's been increasing acuities in long-term care. That's been the challenge. I think that's been the real issue, is the increasing acuity. And to be frank, I don't think the staffing and how we've addressed it have kept up with the increasing acuity needs. Now, obviously, with technology and with building, and by that, when I say technology and building, I mean, barrier-free access with the new standards of living, with pushing out of the ward rooms, which is something our government's done, to private and semi-private rooms. I mean, when we came into office 2 years ago, it was rampant, 4 to a room. And we took immediate steps to change that as a government. Justice Scalise's report, of course, a number of the recommendations, there were 91 specific to long-term care. I believe 24 or so, and we have over 12 to 14, 15 or so implemented, and the remainder are in progress. So there's a lot of work to do. This isn't something, I want to make clear to everyone that we're now doing overnight. This is something that we started when we came into government. We're seeing locally. Just look to the Golden Plough being redeveloped here. Look to Pleasant Manor and others. I mean, we've increased the number of rooms in a lot of our facilities. We're pivoting and supporting rebuilds. Obviously, the Golden Plough is something that predates even our government, but I just think it's important to note that systemically we are moving, but not fast enough, Mark. Not fast enough. This must get done.
So where do we get the money from, David? Because obviously this is going to take a number of resources and funds from the government to get this back on track. We know that we're at a time of a pandemic right now, where costs are being incurred that weren't originally going to be incurred by the government. So where do we go and get the money from now, or who do we look for from now?
Well, I mean, it starts with increasing the investment, which we did when we came into government. We've increased our investments into long-term care. Took a standalone ministry of long-term care now to signify the importance of this piece to this government. Certainly, I mean, I think nothing's off the table here. We need to have a complete review of the long-term care file, one that's public, one that gives frontline workers the opportunity to have their say. But you know what? I heard a PSW on the radio this morning We know a lot of the problems. We don't need a 3-year review or inquiry or anything of that sort to tell us that there are some systemic problems. And I think this is the balance, right? And this is something that I know is very close to the Premier's heart. I mean, he wants this dealt with now, and we want to address the challenges. So, I mean, we've taken immediate action, obviously asked for the Army to, throughout the pandemic, we've asked for an extension for their supports, and took measures to support staffing in our long-term care facilities, specifically, I should say, those with outbreaks. But going forward, we have an opportunity now. We have an opportunity to harness the potential of our education system, our post-secondary. I've mentioned to you on the show in the past, part of the challenge with getting nurses online and PSW stems to training, stems to laddering. I've already told you we're taking steps to address that, but you don't just wake up one night and become a PSW or a nurse overnight. It takes education, and it takes time to get a diploma, to get a degree. So some of those changes we've made, like degree granting autonomy for our colleges, we'll see more nurses come online in rural communities like ours. And we made that change a few months ago, and it's going to start bearing fruit in the coming months. So years ahead.
You're watching Queen's Park Report. I'm Mark Rockburn. Joining me, and as always, is Northumberland-Peterborough South MPP David Piccini. And David, to shift gears a little bit here, you endeavored to take on a number of economic consultations, and the first one was a week ago with nonprofits and SMEs. How is that? How did that go over, and what did you hear from those groups and organizations?
Well, it went really well. I mean, we had a good, frank discussion. I think breaking it into the 6 priority sectors for me really gives me an opportunity to drill down and get into the meat and potatoes and the specifics, which is something that interests me and that I strive for. It's gone well. Certainly, the measures to date, there's support in place. Folks are aware of the programs available to them and are accessing it. There was some challenges over the commercial rent portion. We've been working with the feds, obviously asking them to expand it and looking at ways that we can ensure there's uptake and criteria is expanded. So I'm pleased to say that I am now anecdotally only hearing of 1 or 2 landlords and that aren't taking advantage of this, that have at least been brought to my attention. And now I'm taking steps to work with those landlords to ensure that they do indeed enroll for the program. There are some challenges. I think predictability. Businesses want predictability. I know in the last decade plus, they haven't seen that from government, and that's something we as a government strive to provide. Predictability in terms of staffing, predictability in terms of taxation and other measures. And there's certainly a concern out there that we're in a period right now with COVID that businesses on the other end of it can't take on undue burdens from government. So we need to look at supporting our business community through online supports, for example, helping them transition online. We heard about supports long-term in terms of predictability, giving them the ability to support and a clear criteria to how they can reopen. Obviously, with the guidelines from Ministry of Labor, it's an important step in the right direction. But the feedback's been great, and I'm looking forward to the manufacturing one tonight. But there is no greater support for small business than this PC government, and we certainly understand the challenges they're facing, and we're standing with them shoulder to shoulder. And Jobs and Recovery want to make sure we emerge strong from COVID-19.
Having these meetings, and especially the one last week, are you able to pull from maybe the success stories that you're hearing from businesses that were able to pivot very quickly and go online or offer their business in a different way to maybe those people that are out there that maybe haven't thought of those ideas, and you're able to share those ideas?
Yes, I mean, we've seen all sorts of ingenuity. We saw the Northumberland Producers Alliance. We've seen all sorts of great stories come from our home. And in conversations I'm having, I mean, we're seeing a retooling on the manufacturing side today. I've got a call with an investor looking to come in, ramp up in some of our factory spaces here. We're talking with people who've even coming out of retirement to say, how can we help in the supports here? In terms of the digital strategy, I know the county's embarking on that, working with them, working with our mayors, our lower tier municipalities on ensuring not only is there the backbone for broadband and for infrastructure to come online, but that there's the supports there. Digital Main Street obviously is a very popular tool, but also looking at a real opportunity to position us, not just in the small communities we're a part of, but as a county. How do we position ourselves as a county to Ontario, to the world, to say, come here, spend a weekend here, when we're on the other end of COVID, and we want to continue to drive our tourism sector when we're just an hour east of Toronto. How do we, ensure that when people are looking at a business and certainly working from home and what that looks like? I mean, again, not to beat a horse here, but the Northumberland Producers Alliance, look at that. That wasn't in one location. That was a whole network. I think this is the future. We have to look to that. We have to look to leverage our small businesses and look at maybe combined purchasing power, look at the shared benefits of coming together to form potential clusters. I mean, I'm thinking outside the box here, but I think that's what we have to do as a government and as a community.
I think one thing that has come out of COVID-19 is how many businesses, small, large, corporate, are doing business. And, we saw this week that Shopify came out and said that all their employees will work from home now into the near future. I think the way people think and do business has definitely changed for the good and for the bad during this time.
Yeah, definitely. The changing dynamic of how we work. I recall speaking with both, a security expert and then listening in to a program the other day with some major commercial landlords of office buildings in Toronto. I know after 9/11, and I know and don't want to take any levity in terms of the situation or the gravity of the situation we're in. Certainly in 9/11, for the few short months thereafter, rent in, across cities like GTA, we saw an increase in price where units were selling for a premium or leasing for a premium on the bottom floors. Traditionally, it was the opposite. But there was stabilization. I mean, no, I don't think we're going to see a fundamental shift out of the people-to-people dynamics. I mean, we're humans after all, and the line of work I'm in is a very people-to-people dynamic. I mean, if you're representing your constituents, you have to walk a mile in their shoes. You have to understand the challenges that they're in. I think healthcare and all of that. There's going to be a personal touch, education as well. So I don't think we're going to see, see things turned upside down. What I do think we're going to see is a flexibility to look at perhaps those fixed costs and major facility, major large office space, and how can I potentially look at a cadre of a blended work week of maybe working from home some days, coming in other days for staff meetings, other things of that nature and of that sort. I think potential clusters you could see again working from home. So I do think there will be a look to better utilizing technology. I think Zoom meetings and others, I think back on some of the meetings I would have in person or travel to and think, you know what, I could shift some of those onto Zoom. So I do think that will be good, better not only for our environment, but better for us personally. But I don't think we'll see a profound change away from the important people-to-people dynamics that we need to see in our society.
David, we're up on our first break, but when we come back, we'll talk about your call with Premier that residents of not only Peterborough, but all your riding we're able to have, and who can currently now get tested. You're watching Queen's Park Report. I'm Mark Rockford. Don't go away. We'll be right back with the second half of the show. Welcome back to Queen's Park Report. I'm Mark Rockburn. Joining me as always is Northumberland-Peterborough South MPP David Piccini. And David, right before the break, we were talking about the way businesses were going to be done differently now. And I'm sure you heard that on your call with the Premier that you hosted with MPP Dave Smith out of Peterborough and yourself. How did the call go, and what did you hear from the residents?
Yeah, it was a great teletown hall. The Premier's been very accessible throughout the challenging times we're in. And I know wanted to hear directly from members in our community. So to be able to get the premier live on the phone with constituents was exciting for many, and it was, in the troubling times we're in, I think being able to have that dialogue with the premier is important. Now, to do that, I partnered with MPP Dave Smith to the north, and for all residents of Peterborough, Kawartha, Northumberland, Peterborough South, we had the Teletown Hall, where we dialed in to over 75,000 unique numbers. We had, close to approximately 8,000 people join the line, just over 8,000 people throughout. We conducted some great polls and have some great polling results as a result, and had the opportunity at its core. The point was to ask the Premier questions. Premier gave about 35-40 minutes on the line, which was great, answered a number of questions. I know, people were a bit long-winded. I think lessons learned. I might have to start muting some people or asking them to cut their comments short, but it was good. I mean, the Premier, you heard there was a lot of concern over PPE. There was a concern over the staged opening and how government's going to do that. There was an acknowledgement, though, that the province has shown leadership here throughout. I think we heard a lot of positive comments from those who called in. Certainly the polling results of over 8,000 individuals unique to our riding would suggest that as well. And the dialogue was great. We had, seniors, we had young people, we had business owners, we had farmers. It was a really good opportunity to have a dialogue, and I certainly enjoyed it. And I know MPP Smith and the Premier did as well, as did constituents. I had 60 voicemails right after that call at 9 o'clock. 9:30, I stayed in the office till about 10, writing them all down, and I'm about halfway through calling them all back. But it was, it's been really good, and a good opportunity for me to connect with some constituents that I hadn't spoken to in a number of months.
It's certainly a different way to communicate and to talk to the residents of Northumberland-Peterborough South. Sitting in the background, listening to the questions myself, when you originally said the number as to how many people were on the call, I couldn't believe that. Like, I was shocked myself with the number of people that were on the call. And you think of the questions that came out of it as well were the general questions. It was, the farmer in Warkworth, who's part of the association out there, the agricultural association, that says, hey, we're hurting too, because all our fall fairs and all our fairs for the year have been canceled, and we rely on that money to run the programs that we do in our community. And where's our help? So the wide diversity of calls is what struck me as well.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And if I may, the ag piece, Mark, just because this morning it really got me going on the ag piece. Our ag societies are the backbone. I mean, let's flash forward to the fall. In normal circumstances, what would we be doing? You'd be seeing Brighton Apple Fest, Roseneath Fair, Norwood Fair, Port Hope Fall Fair. I mean, and our ag societies, in many respects, are critical to that. They organize parades, they organize the fairs. Warkworth, it's phenomenal. I go to that every year. So they're important. Our ag community is important. I think we and I would ask all your listeners to please don't forget our ag community, which is the backbone of Northumberland-Peterborough South. I was on the line with Northumberland Federation of Agriculture last night. I got to say, just if you'll allow me, I mean, I was really upset this morning to read from our federal minister, make better use of the supports that you have. And at a time when seemingly the public sees all resources being brought to bear, that attitude from the federal government really upset me this morning. And especially when you consider the supports for major segments, for students, they're even, we're talking in the billions, and then we got 50 million allocated to what is an essential service, the food on our plates that we eat. So that's critical for me. I know not to pivot too much here, but from abattoirs to processing to set aside programs, risk management, agriculture needs help. And I know I've certainly got an extra I've got to roll up my sleeves today, and tomorrow I've got a call with Ernie Hardeman, our ag minister. They need help, and to be frank, as elected officials, we have to do better for our agricultural community.
Pivot to another topic here, David, and that is one that deals with G2 drivers and the fact that G2 drivers have up to 5 years to be able to get their tests done and completed. Many wait right to the last minute, and we're seeing that with some G2 drivers as well, that it's going to expire and they need to get that final testing in. What can you tell of those people? Because I know half a dozen kids that are in that situation that need to get the G2 driver test done because of the fact, if not, they're going to expire, which then means they'd have to start from scratch again. But they can't get the test done because those are closed. I know with driver's license, there's in stickers, it's being exempted and extended. What's happening with the G2 drivers? And if you can't tell us, maybe we can pick it up again on another show.
Yes, I mean that's a good question. Obviously, extensions are in place, and so no one should worry about being caught at a period. I mean, this is even marked commercial truck drivers. I was in the Food Basics parking lot talking to one the other day, and has to go in for health checks too. So it's not even just the licensing component; it's all the other pieces too that lead up to it. So. We're on all of that, and I know right now in place, the point being not to worry right now. Extensions are in place, so you don't need to worry if that expires. However, there are the drive test centers and discussions. I mean, I was on the line with I will have to report back to you with the ultimate solution, but what I can say, privy to discussions that I've been part of as recently as yesterday, we're talking about that dynamic of in-car assessment, obviously in close proximity to one another, what masks and PPE are in place, working with public health guidelines on how that would work going forward. So we're having those discussions live right now with our service centers as well, because there has to be, I mean, both have to open and occur concurrently. And we've got, I know, a number of people who will be looking right away to book their tests. So these are discussions we're having right now. I'm even proposing and I'm asking that we consider perhaps carve-outs for our trucking sector. We have thousands, looking to get on the roads, and that is essential to our supply chain and transportation of food. So these are live discussions we're having, and I will report back to you as soon as a solution or a draft is in place.
Perfect. Thanks very much. Appreciate that. So let's get to the meat of it, and let's find out who can get tested. Because I know that the province has missed their marks recently on the amount of tests that they want to do on a daily basis. There was some confusion as to who can get tested. The Premier has came out and said anybody can now go get tested, symptoms or no symptoms. I've heard from some people that went to get tested after the Premier made the call, and they said, no, sorry, you can't get tested right now. So who can and cannot get tested?
So the important point being we're expanding testing, and that the original directive to look after frontline healthcare professionals, first responders, et cetera, we're expanding that. Obviously, the second tranche was congregate care settings, and we're still working to ensure everybody in our congregate care settings are tested. The directive now is the broader public. Now, I personally won't be going to get tested at the moment. I'm healthy, not exhibiting any symptoms. I know that you can have COVID and not exhibit those symptoms. I personally, have, as I said, taken measures in my own work environment to limit the contact that I have and do by appointments over the phone, Zooms, etc. So my point being here is I think we have to ensure we're ready locally. We've signaled that, look, everyone can and should be getting tested. If you have symptoms, go get tested. Locally here, we've got the Drive Test, the mobile test center with the Trent Hills Family Health Team and our phenomenal Northumberland paramedics. Everyone working on there is doing a heroic job. So full kudos to Samantha, the team, our paramedics under Chief Detler. So they're doing a great job there. And then I know at the hospital, I spoke with our hospital CEO the other day about what it would look like. I think we want to make sure that it's accessible to the public. Questions about whether it's done at the hospital or potential other site need to be had, and residents can know that going forward, we're working around the clock to make sure that we expand that testing locally and look, in conversations I've had with Ontario Health, at priority sectors too, massive industrial manufacturing that's ramping up, ensure that they have testing. If you think of big projects like CNLPHAI, I mean, they've got to get going. We've got people on the teetering on bankruptcy because of how slow they've been to get ramping things up. So we've got to ensure that that we're ready, and that testing is commensurate to that gradual reopening, and we're working around the clock to ensure that.
Thanks, David. As always, our time is up. Half hour goes quickly during these times of COVID, and I know that we usually don't get through half of our topics that we want to talk. But I do appreciate you again taking time out of your busy schedule this week, and I just want to thank you for all you're doing and your staff is doing for the residents of Northumberland-Peterborough South.
Thanks very much, Mark. Great to chat with you as always. Have a great day.
You as well. You've been watching Queen's Park Report. I'm Mark Rockburn. We'll see you in 1 week's time.